Hey everybody, Mike Shea here, along with Ryan Mendoza. We are here to talk about Miskatonic High, number 23. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great. Wow, 23.
I know,
So
right?
many issues already.
I know, I can't believe we made it this far. I can't
Yeah,
believe that
me
they're
too.
still running into monsters at school every week, every month. It's funny how that happens.
Hey, it's only been a few weeks.
That's true. Well, it's been what? I think we ended last season with Christmas, essentially, so it's been like a couple of months.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep, moves fast. Um, so we are here to talk about issue 23. This is the first issue of our new season, our new arc. It's the back to school season. Ryan and I had been talking for a long time about wanting to get the kids back into the school setting because everything kept get taking them further and further away, whether to Matt's family estate or to Sarah's farm. Off back in time, out of this dimension, wherever it was, we were spending an awful lot of time away from the school and really wanted to draw it back into the school because that's sort of, kind of what the series was conceived to be about, and kind of sometimes that's when it's at its best is when they're just kids at the school. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we set up the last season
Hmm.
as a sort of a test for the characters to
Hmm.
see how they would act being separated from each other.
Hmm.
So it was a necessary team building exercise.
Trust fall, yeah.
So that when we get back to school, there'll
Hmm.
be a more cohesive unit,
Yeah. Hmm.
if that's a thing.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
kids will be kids, and chaos will ensue as we will see in this issue.
yes, we will. Yeah, I always found that to be a thing. I don't know your experience in high school, but my experience in high school was, you know, you would start off the school year and you'd kind of be alone, be a loner or whatever, and then you'd make friends, and a lot of times you'd make friends outside doing things outside of school. So when you came back to
Mhm.
school, you were tighter, like as a group of friends, and you would hang out more and stuff like that. So I kind of see it
Yeah,
equivalent to that.
it happens during vacation breaks. I
Hmm.
mean, you're always sad to not see your classmates
Hmm.
again for quite some time, and then you hang out with your neighborhood friends, and
Hmm.
you just bond with them better. And then when you nearing school time, you just dread it again.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then there was a point wherein in my last year in high school,
Hmm.
all my classmates were separated from each other.
Oh, okay.
Like we were put in different classes for some reason. I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe we pissed off the teacher or something.
I can't imagine what you did.
Yeah, so I had to make new friends with new classmates,
Right.
and there were still some of my classmates who were still in my class, but
Hmm.
it just happens.
Right.
Uh, I mean, even in life, when you transfer to another place or to
Hmm.
another work, it just works the same. I think the discussion came from Simon and putting him in a situation where he's not comfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's where it started. Let's see how these kids react, putting them in situations that they're not really comfortable with,
Right.
and they don't have the same um, comfort of having their friends help them out
Right.
because it's limited. It's either just them or just with another person.
Yeah. And it was usually somebody that they were kind of uncomfortable with. So, like, we stuck Simon and Ren together because, they had been kind of at each other's throats for a little while.
Yeah, we tend to like match up the characters with
Hmm.
Alex and Sarah
Hmm.
and Matt and Ren, and then
Hmm.
we thought, why don't we mix it up a
Right.
bit and then see how their friendship uh, blooms
Hmm.
from that experience.
Right. And I think we're starting to get to the payoff of that, which is, so they went on these things, it was Simon and Ren together, it was Matt and Sarah did some stuff together, Alex was sort of off on her own for a little bit. And so it was sort of bringing them back together, and it's kind of the fallout of that and how they move forward.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's also a chance for us. So we tied this also to in the US, I assume it's the same elsewhere. For high schools, right after the Christmas break is the start of the new semester. So it was a chance for us to start, kind of have school be starting again, which also seemed like a good chance to sort of bring some new characters in as like transfer students or new kids moving in or whatever. So it kind of gave us an opportunity to not only bring our characters back, but also bring in some new characters as well, and sort of really start off this season with a lot going on.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the things that we wanted to do was bring in new
Hmm.
characters. But uh, I think we couldn't bring all of them in at once
No.
because we have a bigger plan for this, and
Right.
then we just kind of why don't we introduce some of the characters now and
Hmm.
build upon it?
Right.
So yeah,
Right. Right. And one of the things about our series is there's an awful lot of characters that if you introduced all of the new characters at once, it would be too many. They just you lose track of them.
yeah. I mean, there's this panel from an issue I worked on.
Hmm.
I think it was the last issue or something, and I was drawing all of them in one. And I said, "Man, I don't remember having all of having this many characters before. I mean, there were like six of them before, and now there's like how many of them now?"
It's too many. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's funny, and it's one of those things. Like I remember writing the first issue and sending it to you, the script, and it'd be like, I think you sent back to me. You don't have to put every single character in every single panel.
yeah, yeah.
That's not going to work.
We could like set it up in one panel and
Mm.
then split it up in
Yeah.
other panels, or there's illusions of
Mm.
how to show that they're in one place
Right.
anyway, and it's not necessary to show them all at once. I
Right.
mean, I've seen comics wherein the even the dialogue would like loop
Yep. Hmm.
throughout the panels, and
Hmm.
it's coming from just one character and it's looping from one panel to another. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, and like in front of other characters, so you see who they're talking to, but you don't have to show them all at once.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so that was sort of our idea heading back into this new season, back to school. So we're going to talk about the issue in just a minute, but why don't we talk about this cover? Because I always like these ones. For a while, the last season, we've sort of been getting away from the group shots because, we've been separating the kids into their own stories. And so it would be two here or one there or whatever it is. And this feels like, really we're bringing everybody back together. So can you talk a little bit about how you came up with this concept for this cover and then sort of how you put it together?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Because like we mentioned a while ago, the last season we're just involving like two characters at most. So this was a chance to like bring them all together again. And
Hmm.
since this is like a soft reboot of the
Hmm.
book, it's not really a reboot, but more on like starting over again, like back to school, new adventures, because we
Right.
kind of finished the first uh, first mini arc,
Hmm.
and then and so it was also an opportunity to show off one of the new main characters,
Hmm.
but uh, there was so much going on in this issue that I wasn't really sure how to depict this cover.
Uh-huh.
but there was this one scenario in the comic which was really interesting to me,
Hmm.
which we will discuss later. And so I
Sure.
thought, wow, I think this is the perfect uh, place where we can put all of the characters just
Hmm.
falling into this pit, and then there's this. I mean, it's a trademark. Almost
It is at
it's
this point.
almost funny that we have tentacles in almost every issue. But I
Yeah.
think this was a perfect place to do this because, like I said, it's like uh, the start of a new beginning for them. It's
Right.
like Uncanny X-Men
Yeah.
at one point.
Yeah. Well, and also it's kind of like that because they're in their school uniforms again. So like they're all, back in their uniforms. There's a real color scheme going on here with the green and the purple that I like a lot. And
Yeah,
and
it's
the
like welcoming them back home
Yeah,
to Miskatonic High.
yeah, it really is. I also like how you have the characters, a number of them sort of doing things that are particular to them. So you have, Matt holding the hockey stick, and you have Simon with the violin, and you have, Alex doing her water power. You're giving them a little bit of their personalities in there too.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Hmm.
I mean, the longer you work on the comic, the more you're familiar with the characters, and
Hmm.
you've kind of learn shorthand methods in drawing your characters, and
Hmm.
it's kind of second nature to you by this point.
Hmm.
So it's like certain characters act certain ways, and
Yep.
then you kind of recognize them from the way they stand, the way
Yep.
they talk, the way they move.
Hmm.
And covers are a great way to show that,
Yeah.
to show their characters, because there's no dialogue.
Right. Anyway, I think that's a really cool one. I like it. I like how you can see the school kind of at the top of the lip of the chasm that they're in.
Yeah,
It's
it's kind of weird in a
hmm.
simple way because it has very little detail if you
Yeah,
look at the background, but when you look up top, you see, wait a minute,
right,
isn't that part of the school? What are
right.
they doing down there? So it adds a bit of mystery in it too.
But I also think it's one of those things that I really like about the way that you do the art for the comic, which is there's a lot of things that I don't see, or I think most audiences don't see until they look at it the second time. So, like, probably they look at this, they flip it open, they read the book, and then they look at it again and go, "Oh, okay, now I see the school. Now I understand." It's there's always these. I find that there's a lot that I find on second read or third read that I'm looking through and I'm finding the little details or the cool little things that I didn't notice the first time that I always
Yeah,
like. Yeah.
that's the one thing I like about physical books, is that with digital you read it and then
Hmm.
you move on to the next, but with physical, it's just there, it's just lying beside you, and
Hmm.
sometimes you just pick it up and then you browse through it. There's nothing comparable to that, and sometimes that's when you notice these things, and it's
Hmm.
very frustrating for some artists that do all of this detailed stuff,
Hmm.
and that readers just browse through the pages because they're so invested with the story. They want
Right.
to see what happens next. I was the type of reader who would actually just browse the comic
Oh yeah,
first
yeah.
until the very end, and
Hmm.
then I'll read it. So I wasn't the sort of guy who would, no spoilers.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
No, I would go right to the end, see what happens. Wait a minute, what the?
How did we get there? Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That's how I was when I was a kid. So
Well,
I like putting in stuff like that.
Well, I almost feel like I have to read it twice. So, it's like the first time I'm going really quickly, but I'm reading all the
Yeah.
dialogue and I'm sort of getting what's going on. And then the second time, I sort of have to remind myself to slow down. You know,
Mhm.
it's a weird thing about working on comics as opposed to just reading comics is you spend so much time on these individual panels, whether you're drawing them or doing the lettering or writing the panel descriptions or whatever it is, that we spend a lot more time on each panel than I know people actually spend looking at it. But having done all that, so now when I read other people's comics, I really try and slow myself down to see what's happening in that one panel before moving on to the next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
hmm So, okay. So let's go ahead and start digging into this issue. We start off with Anton telling what happened previously. He has a lot to tell. Like you were talking about, sort of saw this as an opportunity to sort of introduce probably some new readers to Miskatonic High and what's happened, but kind of a lot's happened. So the
Yeah.
previously is always a good way to sort of introduce people to what's happened, and it's kind of entertaining because it's Anton or somebody else telling it from their point of view, which I think is kind of fun. So he fills the readers in on what's happened that got him here, about uh, you know going back in time and being killed and being a ghost and then coming back, being reanimated and all of that. He also talks a little bit about now that he is a person again, both Simon and Alex got him signed up as a transfer student to Miskatonic High. So he's going to start going to Miskatonic High this semester. Um, and he's just saying, the one thing that he liked about being a ghost was not having to do homework anymore, and now that's gone. So he's back to being a person, got to be a student, got to go back to school. Um, which is another kind of way that we wanted to reintroduce the series and the school to people is by having Anton be a character that you can go to school with because it's kind of his first day again. Um, and then we jump in. We start in with a flashback to about 2 years ago, back in suburban Detroit, which is where Alex used to live before she moved back to Miskatonic. Um, and we get to meet her friend Jenny, who we had heard a little bit about in issue number 5, if anybody remembers, that she had a bit of a flashback, yelling at, having an argument with her mother and saying that, I know you don't like it that I was hanging out with Jenny. And her mother says it has nothing to do with Jenny. And then they get into the car crash and all of that. Um, so we thought, maybe it might be fun to bring Jenny back into the story. See what her deal is, have her come back and add a little bit to Alex's story, things like that. So we're starting off 2 years ago, and Jenny has something to show Alex, um, which is an ancient tome with some information about, um, some prophecies, about a character, a man made out of shadow, and what it all means. Just as they're about to get to the good part, um, they're interrupted, and Alex's mom shows up and takes her away and gets in the car, and we know what happens after that. So let's talk about this because I we've talked about it before, but I always like it when you do characters either a while ago or in the future and sort of see them at different ages because I think it makes the characters more like real people that, obviously are aging and go at different time periods. So how did you approach this with the look of Alex and the look of Jenny?
Well, with Alex, I already had a basis for her since we already saw her in issue 5,
hmm
in that flashback, and
hmm
I think we had a discussion before about uh, bringing in rivals for each characters.
hmm
and I immediately thought about bringing in Jenny, which she didn't have a name back then yet.
Right.
And he said, "Yeah, that's a great idea." And then we came up with this concept for her,
Hmm.
and I already had a preconceived look for her,
Oh, did
and
you?
we kind of modified it a bit.
Hmm.
But so coming up with a younger version of her,
Hmm.
it wasn't really that challenging,
Hmm.
but I had to make it look like they came uh, from a different school
Hmm.
altogether, right?
Right.
So the uniform had to be different,
Hmm.
and that's when I decided to kind of just bring in the coat for Jenny,
Hmm.
because we just had this thing for Alex that's very basic, and then
Hmm.
I wanted a callback to what she looks right now, to
Hmm.
what she looked back from before. I think that's one of the good tricks for showing characters, whether they're in the past or the present. You always have to have one item that's a bit of a callback to what they look like right now.
Hmm.
So, for example, Jenny, if you look at the cover, she's wearing this leather jacket
Hmm.
on her. So that's kind of her signature item,
Hmm.
if you will. So for her younger character, that's one of the items that I decided to include,
Hmm.
because if I did the same uniform as Alex did, and it, it wouldn't have character. That's why they're
Right.
called characters. When you're designing characters, they have to be very distinct from each other, even the silhouette.
Right.
So if you look at Alex's silhouette from Jenny's silhouette, you'll know exactly who they are.
Right.
Even in this panel where we see Alex's mom,
Hmm.
because we knew what she looked like in issue 5, even if she's in a silhouette, we already know that that's the mom, and
Right.
we didn't need to see if she was angry, if she was if what her reaction was when she was getting Alex, because that's part of the mystery. We
Right.
decided not to show her face.
Right. But also you do a lot with, just her body language says a lot even in silhouette. So I think you do a good job conveying what the character is feeling is saying through the body language even there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I So did you design Jenny's look as older first, or did you design Jenny's look here first and then age her up for the rest of the book?
No, I already had the look for her as
Hmm.
a grown up,
Mm.
so I already knew that she would be wearing a leather jacket
Right,
and the
right, right.
boots. Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot, she's also wearing boots in here. So it's like growing up, you kind of wear things the
Yeah.
same,
You have a
but
look.
it kind of evolves, but you have a preference for
Hmm.
certain things.
Right.
So yeah, i always I always have trouble describing how I come up with these, so I'm sorry if I was mumbling earlier, but yeah, things come back to me when I start looking at the images more. But yeah, that's basically how I got to making them look like this
Right.
at this time period. So at one point you want it to be a bit different from what they are right now, but at the same time it has to still be familiar.
Right. Right, because she has to be recognizable when she's older. So, both the reader
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
characters have to
Be-
recognize her right away.
because when you see her in the next few pages, and who is this character?
Right.
If they don't have any similarity, you won't have that recognition in your mind.
Right, and I mean, I've done that in TV shows or in other comics or something where they do go from one version of the character to an older version of the character, and they don't look anything alike or they don't have any similarities, and you're like, who is this? Like, and it takes you a while to figure out that this person is the same as that person was. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Having something for the reader, the viewer to latch onto to identify this character. So no matter how they age, you can see them. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so then we go to modern time. Again, we were thinking about reintroducing the story, the series to people, and so wanted to sort of give an idea of where Miskatonic was. Um, so having Jenny and her dad sort of moving to Miskatonic gave us an opportunity to sort of reintroduce the town. And so she's sort of telling the story of driving into town, and it's kind of far away from everything. You have to go through back roads to get there, kind of through forests, and it's kind of, in the summer, it's kind of a little bit of a touristy spot, to go see the old hotel or whatever, but during the winter, it's kind of pretty quiet. Um, and she's driving through and she's talking about how her dad is going to enroll her in Miskatonic High, which is the private school in town, rather than the public school, which is kind of more of a regional school, which is actually pretty common for there. The towns aren't big enough. So what they do it by like county. So like several towns have a school and you go to it. So in terms of where we are, maybe they live in Miskatonic, but the school is over in Dunwich or something like that. Um, and so they pull up where they're going to rent, and it turns out that they're going to be renting the other half of Alex's house, where Matt and his parents used to live before they moved into the mansion. Um, and so they pull up, and Alex is just getting ready to go to school, and there they are. And so she first sees Jenny's dad, Mr. Mason, who we will find out more about in the next issue or two. Um, how did you design Mr. Mason? Because he's an interesting guy for us.
Yeah, well, same as Jenny. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be somewhat familiar, so they have to share certain features.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I decided on the eyes.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I think that's the thing that's recognizable with the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, I just wanted to design a character that would be interesting to look at because he will be popping up in the comic for quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're designing characters, it has to have this certain quality that's different from what you call side character. I mean, NPCs or just background characters. So they
Right.
have to have a certain aura about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted him to be a bit more regal.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's going to be this dynamic between him and Alex's dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to show a contrast between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Jenny's dad, you can see that he's really well dressed, well
Right.
mannered, and we've seen Alex's dad, who's kind
Got
of a slob and like
it.
this, and you kind of wonder how are these two guys how do they know each other? How
Mm-hmm.
were they friends before? And
Mm-hmm.
how did Alex's dad end up like that? If
Mm-hmm.
they were so if they were so close before.
Right.
So it has to have a starting point. Every character has to have a starting point, and you don't want them to be the same when the story ends.
Right.
So this is kind of the starting point of that, and we'll see if one character remains the same or what.
Yeah. Yep. Right. Because I was going to say, he looks very neat. He looks very prim. He looks very proper. He looks very kind of almost officious, like an important person. I really like the look of him, and I like that one panel of him and Jenny together because you really can see the family similarity there between the two. It's like, okay, you instantly get it that he's her dad. Um, so yeah, I think that's very cool. I always am interested, and I think other people are interested in how characters are designed, like what goes through the thought of when making them. So I always think that's very cool.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and that it also kind of relates to his job, which we
mhm,
don't know yet at this
mhm,
point, right?
right,
So
mhm,
it kind of it's kind of important to show that even if you don't know anything about the character yet,
right.
so that when the revelation comes in, you
Mhm.
said, "Oh,
Oh
that
yeah.
makes sense."
Hmm.
I mean, you don't think of it like that, but subconsciously, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, because it's one of those things, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, is that sometimes you have impressions of characters when you first meet them, and then sometimes when the revelations come, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I completely see that. Or sometimes it's like, really, him? How does that work? And then you sort of have to lay the groundwork for why that makes sense to the character.
Mhm.
So yeah, no,
And that
that's
just introduces more exposition.
right.
You just save yourself more time by showing it visually.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that I definitely appreciate when we can do, because God knows we don't need any more exposition in this comic. Um, So, so Alex volunteers to take Jenny to walk Jenny to school because she's going to go ahead and start today. As they're walking along, they hear a voice in a snowdrift, and it's Anton, because when Jenny and her dad pulled up to move into the house, he had to get out because he was squatting there because he doesn't have anywhere to live. His parents don't know who he is. He doesn't have any relatives or anything. I mean, he really is on his own. And I think Alex, sort of let him stay up there and has probably been feeding him, kind of like a stray cat. Um, so Anton is there. He's annoyed that he had to get out of the house, and now he's wants to know the backstory of Jenny because he's Anton. He's going to wheedle his way to find out anything, and probably the most inappropriate way that he can. And so he's asking Alex all kinds of questions. He's asking Jenny all kinds of questions. They're both getting annoyed by him. Um, Let me ask, like, when you have characters sort of interacting like that, like, how is there certain things that you try to do with the panel to sort of accentuate the body language of me being annoyed by that person, or these people being into each other? Is there thought to that in how you want to angle the how you look at people, or how they're in the space together, or anything like that?
Yeah, because basically being an artist is like being a being a director or
Hmm.
something. You have to instruct the actors to uh, move a certain way, act a certain way, so that you can sell the drama,
Hmm.
sell the scene.
Hmm.
And with drawing sequential art, it has to be one of the skills that you have to develop on your own, or else the characters will look stiff and
Yeah.
un- unbelievable. Because even if you can draw perfect cars, perfect buildings, or perfect figures,
Hmm.
it will be useless if you don't know at least basic mannequinization.
Yeah.
It's a term that you use for, manipulating the, because back in the day, artists would use mannequins to
Yeah.
pose so that they can see it visually.
Hmm.
Uh, and sometimes even Disney animators would look at themselves in the mirror. I don't do that. just, just just to see the the facial expressions.
Right.
So
Like how it pulls your
yeah,
skin.
yeah. So it's not just body movements, but it also has to match with the facial expressions.
Hmm.
So by learning your characters, you kind of learn how they speak and move.
Hmm.
That's different from other characters, like
Yeah.
how they cross their hands, how they scratch their head. If they have any other mannerisms, you
Hmm.
have to place it there so that they're just not standing wooden like that.
Yeah.
It
Unless we're
makes it,
talking Simon, but yeah.
yeah, it makes it more interesting, and also it helps it make the scene more intimate.
Yeah. Right. Um, so they move on and get to school where Sarah's getting off the bus. All of the kids are teasing Sarah because, the end of the last season, they all found out that she had a tail, was growing a tail, and they've all been, and
Oh,
she's,
I kind of forgot about that.
yeah, Sarah would like people to forget about it as well, but the kids at school aren't ever going to forget it or let her live it down. So she's kind of dreading going back to school because she knows what's coming. Alex is promising to help her out to make it not so bad. But meanwhile, of course, is caught up with Jenny and Anton being a jerk and all of that. Um, so Jenny and Anton go into the Fridge's office, the vice principal's office, to go get new student orientation, which allows Alex and Sarah to go off towards first period. Um, as they're walking through, we get to see, some of the kids drawing on Sarah's locker and drawing her as a rat or something like that. Um, and Ren tells them kind of to knock it off, but in a great Ren sort of way, which is, I don't know if I would do that if I were you, because remember what happened to Chris. Well, what happened to Chris? Well, he went off into the woods chasing after Sarah and never came back. And they're like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, and he even missed hockey and a chance to hit somebody, and he never misses a chance to hit somebody. And they're like, oh yeah, and you're right about that. And she's wandering off. I'm like, man, these people are idiots. Um,
yeah. See, that's the thing.
mhm,
We were talking about certain mannerisms of the characters.
mhm,
It's the same way with dialogue. You recognize a character by the way they talk,
mhm,
and the way you describe Ren
mhm,
doing Ren kind of things.
mhm.
It's it has to be particular to that character so that
Yeah,
you easily recognize her. So that if there's a pattern that's off,
right.
you kind of get that too.
It's also really nice to be able to have all those things happening in one issue again. To have Sarah be doing Sarah things, to have Alex be doing Alex things, and have Ren sort of be commenting on it. It's like there's a lot of it's kind of like music. For a while we had just like one instrument or two instrument playing in these issues, and now it's like we got the full orchestra again, and we get to hear all the different kinds of dialogue, and we get to see all the different characters again. It's really nice to have them all back together again. I hadn't realized how much I kind of missed them not all being in the issue.
And we can see later how effective or not they are
Right,
when they're together. I
right,
mean, you can see their strengths and weaknesses.
right. But also they're much better at this now. Like in the first season, maybe the first two seasons, they were
Yeah,
really untested. They had, they were scared all the time and weren't
and they
able to
weren't
do
familiar with each other
right.
at that time.
Right, but also weren't familiar with the world. Like, all of these horror things were kind of new to them. Now they're a little bit more used to it, and now they're able to sort of think in the moment so that they can do something about it rather than just run away.
Yeah, they're kind of familiar
Hmm.
with the situation and how to handle things.
Yeah.
Like they're really good at running.
They are very good at running. Um, so Ren is about to walk into class, and we see this weird um, kind of temple with tentacles and creatures and ghouls and fire and all kinds of stuff going on there in our first splash page. And there's a kind of shadowy figure calling for the girl. Um, I love this. So I showed this to one of our variant artists, cover artists, and he just fell in love with this. And so he wanted to do a whole cover just on this one image. Um, so how did you come up with this? Because this is awesome.
You came up with this.
I,
You crazy man.
I'm like, yeah, alter,
I mean, when I read the script, I said, what? I had to reread it several times just to understand what's going on. And
Mhm.
then I was trying to visualize it. I think I had like 3 days of sleepless nights just
Oh,
to.
sorry.
No, no, no. No, it's fun. It's
Hmm.
actually fun. I
Yeah.
mean, it, the I think the hardest part is like thinking of a proper composition.
Hmm.
And so, i I mean, the script comes with enough detail and description in it, but you
Hmm.
just have to find that right angle, that
Yep.
right balance of it. I mean, from the foreground to the
Yep.
background to the middle ground, it has to have all these interesting things just so that people know what's going on, or
Hmm.
at least confuse them with what's going on. I mean, when when doing things like this, I mean, the splash page itself is usually the wow moments of
Hmm.
the comic book, and this sets up the issue properly
Hmm.
with what the heck is going on.
Right.
I mean, if this happens in real life,
Yeah. That's
I'd probably fall.
right.
Oh, I mean, I'm not the type of guy who would be walking with the phone on the face. But yeah, this is scary stuff, and with that much going on in the background, it really brings the horror back. I mean,
Yes.
with the first few pages, it's like bringing the mundane back. Like,
Yep.
yeah, oh, it's all nice and familiar.
Yep.
We're back to where we're supposed to be, and then open the door. Oh yeah, we're definitely back.
Yep. We're back to school. Yeah, and it's one of the things that we talked about when we were trying to come up what we were going to do for this issue was the idea of them going back to school, but also something is happening at the school. And we started talking about, they're seeing things that may or may not be there, like they don't really know yet. And as we started talking about it, it's just like it's a great idea. And then once we started figuring out what they would see and piling it on, so they one character would see this, and then the next character would see this, and then the next character would see this, and it allowed us to bring so many uh, creatures and things like that into the comic. Normally, when we have a monster, we have one monster, and it goes through the whole issue. This really allowed us to see different monsters, see different creatures, see different spaces that we wouldn't normally get to see in one issue. And so, that's really cool because I love being able to see it all, but also it meant, okay, yeah, let's do a splash page of this because we're not going to get a chance to see this again. So let's really see it.
Mhm.
So Yeah, I mean, I loved it. It kind of felt like we were turning you loose to say, okay, do this and then do this and then do this and then do this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
If this page does not make you want to flip to the next page, I don't know what will.
right. Yeah, I mean, basically, if you don't like this page, you don't like Miskatonic High. There's just no point, just go find something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
Maybe knitting.
Yeah, maybe knitting, crochet, something like that. Um, okay, so meanwhile, back at the new student orientation, um, the fridge is turning it over to Simon because he's the president of the student body. And he's introducing the kids to the school and what it is. And of course, it's Simon's version of Miskatonic High. So he's talking about, the student council, and he's talking about the student newspaper, and he's talking about the honor council, and all the things that, in his mind are what make up the school. And so
Yeah,
we find out,
basically exposition.
yeah, yeah, sorry.
Well, we had to
Yeah,
because it's basically the reintroduction of the whole Miskatonic High. I mean, if
right.
you jump into this comic, I mean, I hate doing that, saying which is the best place to start reading comics. Just buy a comic
Right,
and read it.
right.
That's the best place to start. I mean, yeah,
I, yeah,
that's a good way to start. It's the way I started.
right.
And if you have to do it right. I
r-
mean, if this has to be the jumping on point, it has to have enough information for new readers.
Right. And also, we're sort of setting some things up here. So we sort of have to set up Simon's story, which is
Yeah,
setting up the honor code, setting up his tiff with Ricky from the newspaper, setting up the idea that he sort of stole the election from Josh,
yeah,
sort of,
exactly.
yeah, you know,
Even with
um,
this much exposition, there's still there's still mystery and drama going on in there. There's still an interesting thing going on there.
right,
And
right,
that has to be something that writers have to strive for is every page has to have something interesting for
yeah,
them to go on.
right, right, and sort of there always has to be that sense of mystery for the reader. What is happening? What's going to happen next? And always want to make sure that the reader wants to turn the page and find out what happens next and pick up the next issue. But it's like you were
Yeah,
saying,
so
when I
it's kind of
yeah,
a
go ahead.
balance of of knowing about what happened before and
Hmm.
then moving forward.
Right,
I mean, that's a hard balance
right.
to pull off. I mean,
But also wanted to sort of put the reader in the character of like Anton or Jenny, where this is their first day at school, and you know what it's
mhm.
like the first day of school. There's always too many teachers talking and telling you, what the grade is going to be and how, the attendance policy is and all this
The
boring school
rules.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. That's the nature of going to school. It's the first days are always like that.
Mhm.
Um, so one of the things that we find out as Simon is leading them on a tour of the school is that he is being charged in the honor council with having stolen the election. Ricky's bringing charges against Simon. And so, of course, Simon is now freaking out about this because, the honor council and things like that, he takes that very seriously. Um, while he's doing that, Anton, Jenny, and the new kid, Pete, are Peter, are walking off, being like, "What the heck was that? Was that like the most geekiest thing you've ever heard?" And the answer is yes, it is. And they hear a scream, and it's Ren, and so they run over and find her crawling out of the classroom because, of course, she almost fell into the temple. And when they go in and look into the classroom, it's just a home ec class. Um, did you take home ec when you were in high school? Because I did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I learned how to bake things. That's how I know how to sew a button.
yeah, we even had etiquette,
Oh, did you?
how to eat properly
Uh-huh.
using which spoon, which fork, which knife,
Oh, that's awesome.
from which order,
Uh-huh.
and how to sit.
Which goes on
It's
the right and
crazy,
the left?
man.
Because I can never remember. Did the fork and
I
knife?
don't remember, man. I don't remember. It's still. I try to remember it when I'm in fancy restaurants
Uh-huh.
or at least steakhouses,
Uh-huh.
and I just use the nearest
Yeah, whichever
fork.
one's
I think
closest.
that's
Yeah.
how it is, right?
Yeah, I think
The
so. I think
nearest
you.
one is the first one,
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you worked your way in.
but I tend to get the biggest fork.
Yeah, I use the same fork. Salad. Dinner, whatever it is. Just give me the one fork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. And the
Um.
sharpest knife.
Yeah. What? It's gonna do exactly what you need it to do.
Hmm.
Okay. So they've gone in. They realized that for some reason, whatever Ren saw is now gone. And there was this thing saying about the girl. Um, and whenever any magical thing, a legendary thing talks about a girl, the one girl that they're always talking about is Alex. It's been like that for 23 issues. So why would it be any different now? So they decide to go off and find her. She is So we cut to her and Sarah, and she's seeing Sarah enter first class, and she's pissed off at all the people making fun of Sarah and not really paying attention to where she goes. And she falls into this pit of, and how do you pronounce this? The Thothian? Does that sound
I
right?
don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A lot of these things you only see spelled out, you never actually hear the pronunciation of, so you have no idea
Yeah,
how to
I think
pronounce
it's better written than
it.
spoken out. I think
Probably.
if you speak it out correctly, it will actually come out.
Hmm. No,
So
now, did
I think
you
it's Chthonian.
Chthonian? Okay, let's say
Yeah,
that. Yes.
Chthonian.
Now, did you do any research into what a Chthonian looks like? Because I just went by what I could find on the web about what it is and how it exists sort of down in the molten core of the earth and is really hot and things like that.
Yeah, I did.
Hmm.
But if you look it up on the interwebs, as the cool kids say,
Is that what the cool kids say?
uh, I don't know. I don't know brain rot.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it's mostly fan art.
Yeah,
So it's really hard to know whether one is more accurate from the other.
right.
And all you have to go on is just this vague descriptions from a paragraph in a short story in
Hmm.
a pulp magazine
Right.
collected into a book.
Right.
But of course, uh, there are other artists in other reference books that show what a Chthonian looks like,
Hmm.
and you kind of marry all of those things in and just come up with your own idea. But basically, it's like a giant worm with tentacles coming out of its mouth, or at least that's what I mainly saw.
Right.
Maybe there are other depictions of it that I'm not aware of, but
Right.
this is kind of the most popular
Mhm.
depiction of it.
Well, and we had talked about it one time, and you had said something that really sort of struck with me, and I've sort of kept it ever since. Is you can do the research, but at some point, just don't worry about it. Just make it your own thing. You don't have to religiously slave over what came before, especially when it is, like you said, it's a paragraph description in a short story, and usually it's in the vaguest terms possible. And so you have to make it yours and make it feel like it fits into the rest of the comic world. So
Yeah, but the
yeah.
important thing is you still do the research, you
Mhm.
still learn the lore, and you kind of get the gist of it,
Mhm.
at least the basic idea of it. And if it's still not, if there's no like concrete reference of it,
Hmm.
then just stick with your imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, with these kind of things, you're right. The artist will basically just draw it according to his style
Right.
and that setting
Hmm.
that it's from. I mean, if we were probably doing a straight up adaptation of
Mm.
where this came from, then maybe we could ask the rights holders about more references that they would come. I
Right.
mean, I'm taking up this online class, and the instructor was talking about commercial art, and uh, there's this point where he said that there's you can either please yourself with your art or
Hmm.
please the client. And when you're working on commercial art, you have to please the client.
Yeah, that's true. I've been
But
there.
yeah, yeah. So it's the same with this one. It's either, since we're working on our comic, we have to mold it into our own
Yeah.
stuff, but it also has to please the people who are familiar with it. So you still have to have that basic knowledge about it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't have something where like someone who has some familiarity with it, look at it and see that it's furry and be like, no, that's not a Chthonian. Like if you're doing that, then you're doing it wrong. But if you got the basics of it, if you got the outline of it, if you got the main points of it, somebody will come along and say, okay, yes, it's an interpretation, but I see it. And that's sort
Yeah,
of what you're going
I mean, if I wanted to go crazy, I would probably put more um, things
for.
on its underbelly, and then
Oh yeah, yeah.
maybe make it more centipede-like.
Sure.
There's so many ways to depict it.
Right. Well, I think it works really well here because I always like when we get like a weird angle, but also, the way that you can see it sort of coming out and circling around and come and get her. It's a really cool, it's a cool angle. It's a cool sort of way that it's moving. You get the feeling that it is this big, long thing, and it probably takes a long time and takes a
Yeah,
long to turn, So
I
that's very
kind of
cool.
have this fear of heights.
Hmm.
It's not really fear of heights, but more like, I don't know, is it vertigo? Like when you look at
Yeah.
something from below, you kind of, so
Yeah. And you have to
it,
back up a
it
little
kind
bit.
of it kind of relates with drawing horror, is
Hmm.
that you have to draw the things that scare you.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid of heights, so it scares me.
And I'm afraid of Catonians.
There we go. I think it's cute. Okay, so one of the things that Alex finds out is that it's really, really hot because it burns her. And so she uses her water bottle to splash it because, of course, if something's really hot, water will, cool it off real quick and sort of damage it, make it to hurt it, which allows her to get out of the hole. Um, where Simon finds her, and Simon, of course, is looking for her to come help him with his honor council hearing, and she's
I
like,
love the lettering on this, by the way.
well, he's asking. She's like, "Did you see the hole, the Chthonian, and all that?" He's like, "Come on, no. I need you to get off the floor and come help me. There's something really, really important." And she's like, "Yeah, we need to go save everybody else from the monsters, right?" And he's like, "No, you need to help me with the honor council." Um,
Yeah,
because Simon, he's always got his
being
pulse on what's
Simon.
important. Yeah,
Yep,
yep.
Simon being Simon.
Simon being Simon. Simon is a gift that keeps on giving. Um,
Simon is a meme.
yeah. He really is. Anytime that Simon can be introduced to somebody new and volunteer to be president of whatever thing that they're doing, that is Simon in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so we cut back to Matt is talking to the fridge the fridge has heard about Matt's mother dying, and so is offering his sympathy and all of that. And meanwhile, Sarah's walking by. In the background, I can't remember what these. Do you remember what these things were? The flying thing? I can't remember from this.
Hunting horror,
Yeah, maybe. I can't remember.
hunting
It's in the script,
horrors.
but I can't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Hmm.
she's not looking, and so it's attacking the kids behind her, and she thinks that they're making fun of her, and so she turns around and starts berating them, and of course the flying things are gone. Um, she hooks up with Matt, and they start walking and decide to walk to biology class together. Um, and when they walk in, they find that it's turned into a bit of a cemetery, and there's two ghouls there eating one of the frogs that's to be dissected. Um, I gotta tell you, I absolutely love these ghouls. I think they're hilarious. I think they're cute. I love that they're eating the frog. I love the cemetery here. I think everything about this works so well. Um, is there? Because I hadn't really done any visual research on it. Is there kind of an idea of what a a a, a, a mythos ghoul looks like?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are descriptions of it and some, like I said,
Hmm.
fan art
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
other depictions of it in different media.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, if you talk about ghouls, you already have a preconceived notion of how they would look like based on movies
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
TV series. But the one in Lovecraft's world is kind of different. They look more like canine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They look more canine, and yeah. So I tried to adapt that as close as possible. But like I said, it's kind of in the world, so
Yeah.
it's similar to how I would draw the rat things and
Hmm.
those kind of things. So it's very feral and
Yeah.
very animal-like,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's it's kind of undead, kind
Yes.
of unnatural.
Yeah. I, 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 I definitely get the canine feeling to it. I get this sort of like undead thing to it, but I also think it's like maybe it's because it is canine. Again, it looks really cute's not the right word, but it looks cool. It looks familiar and fun. I really like the design of these ghouls. I don't somehow we got to get them back in because they look great. I absolutely love them. Um, so anyway, the ghouls are eating lunch. They're eating the dead frogs that are going to be dissected, and they ask Sarah if they can share her lunch, and she's like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, the human here," and she's like, "I'm not going to eat Matt," and they're like, "Oh, more for us." Um, and Matt, of course, isn't having it and gets to hit people with his hockey stick, which is always fun. And as they're running away, of course, the shadow thing is there talking about the girl again. And, they know again that it's got to be Alex. Um, they run past Mr. Walid, I've always called him Walid, who is having his own vision of the shadow thing. Um, this is a cool setting. How did you decide on the background? Because I don't remember that I even wrote anything in the script for the background, and this looks really cool.
It's supposed to be
The house?
part of the witch house,
Yeah, I think that's
so it
right.
has weird angles.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, yeah. It
And
certainly looks like that.
so I decided to make the windows crooked and look like pentagrams.
Hmm.
So it supposedly doesn't mention it as being part of the witch house, but I
Right.
wanted to give hints of it there.
Right. It
But
works.
more so, but more so like a prison.
Hmm.
It's like everywhere you look, there's bars in it,
Right.
so it's inescapable.
Right. It
Why
really.
that's what Walid is seeing, I don't know why, but we'll
I like
probably
it though.
find out.
I think it looks great. I really do. And yeah, it's so for I guess those listening, yeah, you already know towards the end of this, but the shadow character is of course a character who's inspired by um, dreams in the witch house, which had a character who was haunted by a dark black shadowy character. And so we've sort of taken that idea and sort of adapted it for the comic. um, so yeah, so yes, the dream house background, I think you're right. I think that's exactly it. It does look like it. And by the way, I love that window with the bars that look like pentagrams, um, pentacles, because I it's such a good visual representation of it, and how it ultimately gets used I love a lot, but it looks great here. So Waleed is, of course, Mr. Waleed is going through his own thing. Um, Out in the hallway, Alex and Simon are walking towards the Honor Council hearing. Honor Council hearings are actually a real thing. It happened at my school where one of the student officers had to go to a hearing, and it's treated very much like a criminal proceeding, like a court case. And so really wanted to sort of do that here and sort of see that.
Uh,
Um, One of
we
the
don't
things
have
that,
that here.
oh, what's that?
We don't have that here.
Oh no, yeah, it's a very upper class private school thing. It's like really weird. I've only seen it at places like that that are very old and very.
But I like it because it adds a bit more character into the school.
Mhm.
It makes it different from our typical schools.
Right. I also like that it puts the power in the students' hands rather than the administration's hands. When what happens to Simon happens, it's because the students did it. So it really sort of creates this thing where it's like there's no help for them really from adults. It's really kind of them on their own, and
Mhm.
even to the level of what's going on in the school.
But I like it because it gives a sense um, of oldness to the
Hmm.
school,
Yeah,
of this being from a different time, a
yeah,
different era,
yeah,
where the practices were very different,
yeah,
very old,
yeah,
ancient even.
yep,
And so bringing this in is very, very interesting to me.
yeah, yeah. It feels like a lot of the things that Lovecraft was sort of drawing on was old New England, and which was kind of came over from England, and this was one of the things. It's like old schools, like old private schools over in England, they had this, and so when they came over to the to the colonies, to America, whatever, they sort of brought it with them. So there's still these remnants of that in especially in like New England and places like that. So yeah, I mean it's somewhat realistic, but it's also kind of we're playing it up here.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Alex has come up with a defense theory for Simon, which is, look, they must not know that you were, you know, kind of possessed when this thing happened because, you had the Golgoroth, and, it helped you cheat and steal the election and all this. And if they knew all that, they wouldn't be doing it this way. They'd be coming at you. So they must not know that you really did it. So all you have to do is just deny everything. Just say, make them prove that you did it, because they can't, because they don't have any proof. And so of course Simon is all about that. Um, but as they're walking in, they hear screams, and of course Alex needs to go off and find out who needs help, because that's Alex. She has to help people. Meanwhile, Simon is going to go and take care of himself because really that's what's important to Simon. Um, so they start going through this hearing. Um, and as they're going through it, Simon starts seeing his own thing. And what he sees is the little man-faced rat thing that was in Dreams in the Witch House. How did you go about designing this character? Because this is kind of a famous one from the mythos. How'd you decide design it?
Well, I had to make sure that it looked different from the rat things
Mm-hmm.
because immediately that's what people think
Yep.
it was, but it wasn't really. There's some interesting depictions of it wherein it really looked like a rat. Even the face was a
Mm-hmm.
bit more ratish, and I decided to make it more human
Mm-hmm.
features, but very, very distinct from the rat things,
Yeah.
wherein just like the ghouls, the rat things were more feral in its depiction, almost uh, what I would describe before when I was drawing the rat things was they look ghoulish.
Yeah.
And now that when I drew the ghouls, they look rat thingish, but very distinct from each other at the
Yeah.
same time. And so I wanted the what's this creature's name again?
Oh, it's somebody brown.
Yeah, yeah, but I wanted it to be very. The body is more rat-like,
Yeah.
but the face is more human.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Well, yeah, because like the rat things go the other way, which is, the bodies are more human-ish and the face is more radish. So yeah, it's kind of like an
Yeah,
inverse.
because the description of the rat things was like a mix between rats and apes, I think,
Yeah.
if it's accurate. So for this one, there was very few references to draw from,
Mhm.
and there were some interesting things that came upon, but eventually I came up with something like this. So
Right.
just wanted it to be very distinct from the rat things, so that it's very clear that this is a whole other thing.
Right. Yeah. And the coloring helps, the green tint to him really sort of makes him stand apart. So Simon is seeing this. The others aren't, whether it's from the angle that he's at, or that they can't see him, but only Simon can. We're never quite sure. Um, but of course, it throws Simon off as he's doing his testimony, and they think he's just starting to go crazy. At one point, they even ask if he's trying to do an insanity plea, for the charges. Um, as this is going on, he hears screaming, and he decides he sort of pieces together what Alex was telling him, which is, look, if you're going to be student body president, you got to actually be president to help people. Don't be president just to be president. That does you no good. Um, and so he decides, okay, yeah, I gotta go off. Meanwhile, the fridge has decided to call an assembly because he's getting all these reports from all these kids about weird things happening throughout the school, and of course, it couldn't possibly be real. And so he calls them all down into the auditorium where it's all set up for the band or the orchestra, and as he's talking to them, um, this thing shows up behind him. I can't remember. Do you remember what that thing is? The thing that ends up behind him?
The flying polyps.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's it. Yep, that's exactly it. Which is possibly the craziest thing that we've seen yet. With the eyes and the flying and oh my God. Um, and Then we get this double page spread. We don't do double page spreads very often. It's very rare that we do them. Um,
Mhm.
this one reminds me a lot. Do you remember we did one with the crossover with Lovecraft PI, where it's just the whole world was coming to an end?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, this one reminds me a lot of that because we get to see all of the different creatures, running rampage through the student body, and it's absolutely wonderful to see them all together in this two-page spread. Um,
Yeah.
how do you approach doing a two-page spread? Because again, we don't do them very often, and I got to imagine that it takes a lot to figure out, what you're going to fill this whole canvas with.
Yeah, well, if you think of it that way, you're going to overwhelm yourself. So
Yeah.
basically, you just have to think of it as one big panel.
Okay.
It's just a panel that's
Really big.
elongated like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just that you have more drawing area, but at the end of the day, it's just you
Hmm.
composing where the character go into.
Hmm.
So all of it is just with how you compose the panel itself.
Hmm.
And so doing thumbnails and layouts will help greatly with this kind of panels.
Hmm.
I mean, when dealing with lots of characters, you have to layer it.
Right.
So you just can't populate it with people everywhere. There has to be purpose. What is this character doing? What is that character doing? It's just
Hmm.
not something to fill the area with. There has to be a mini story there somewhere. Like
Right.
there's this portion here where this girl is wearing a gym dress or something, and
Hmm.
she's running away. So maybe she came from track and field or something,
Yeah.
and she's a good runner, and so she's one of those who have the instinct to run away immediately. And then there's other, and then we have the group of kids back here that's clearly um, to show that they have their own position here,
Yeah.
and it's separate from the other people.
Right.
But the thing is, you can't uh, overcrowd it with monsters and people like this without really thinking about their positions
Yeah.
in a clear manner.
Hmm.
I mean, you can't put the flying tulip flying over the Kuchonian because that will block it
Hmm.
and it will make the image messy.
Right.
So you have to separate all of them
Right.
like that. You have to like spotlight all of them in their own area,
Yeah. Kind
and
of keep
then
keep the silhouette clean.
yeah, and then what the kids do around them is always different from what's going on with the other one. So it
Yeah.
tells a story in a way.
And how do you use color? So like I can see with the kids, with the kids that we're trying to draw the reader's eyes to, the color pops out more, so it's more vivid, it's more, whereas the characters behind them and to the side of them, their color is a bit duller or darker, so that your eye draws to the characters that we want to see rather than the other ones.
Yeah, correct. Usually, when it comes to main characters, they're usually the ones who are the most saturated.
Hmm.
But even when you're dealing with main characters, it's usually the one who's talking
Hmm.
who is the most saturated.
Hmm.
Even if, for example, the fridge here is the biggest character
Right.
because he's in the forefront, he's still saturated because he's not the main focus of the image here.
Right.
It's actually the monsters coming out,
Right.
and the main characters are just reacting to it,
Right.
even though the words are coming from them. So if you can see, the monsters are the most saturated among them, even though they're the ones in the background.
Right. Because that's where your eyes go first, is to the monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So immediately when you open the splash page, that's the thing that connects with you at once.
Right. So you want people to see the monsters first, and then to pull back from that and see the fridge, and then see the other main characters.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Cool. Um, okay. So at this assembly gone wrong, the shadow thing pops up and calls for the girl, and Alex, of course, thinking that it's her, decides to go confront the shadow. Um, But of course, we find out that the shadow actually isn't after Alex, it's after Jenny. Um, and just as we're finding this out, Simon runs in and he's determined to save the day in the most Simon way possible. So he gets to the microphone and announces that the monsters need to leave the premises immediately, and of course, nothing happens. Um, he's not even sure that they can hear him. So he picks up the violin and starts playing because they make a loud noise, and that seems to drive the monsters and especially the shadow thing crazy. Um, Meanwhile, so he's keeping them busy, and the rest of the characters start running away. And Jenny fills us in on the rest of her backstory, which is that after Alex had left, she read from the book, which brought forth this shadow character who has haunted her ever since, both in her nightmares and while she's awake, and asks for Alex's help to deal with this. And of course, Alex says yes, because that's what Alex does. Um, they barricade the assembly hall, and try and figure out what they're going to do next. Um, they figure out that there's something about the music, and we've sort of established that in the comic up to this point, that music, that vibrations do things, have certain scientific properties that can do things, and so they decide that they need to broadcast the music to the entire
Yeah,
school.
certain frequencies and
Yeah,
that resonate
right, and that
through with other creatures from
right.
other dimensions.
Right, and we've established that in the comic, and really, I mean, that was established in the mythos from, the music of Eric von Zahn. Um, that music has that strange music, strange frequencies, has the ability to manipulate space and time. And
Yes.
that's something that we've established as a property, and so are sort of carrying through. Um, Always nice when they get chased through the school, and as they get to the vice principal's office to use the microphone to broadcast through the entire school, they find the shadow is holding Jenny there, um, and it's cool because we can see the sort of portals behind him to different worlds, and some of them we've definitely seen before. Um, Definitely some of them we haven't. Um, and Alex tells Simon to use the music and play it to take care of the creatures, and so he does. And this is a really cool sequence of panels. I always I don't know how you do this. The music that shimmers through, but then also the way that you connect it up so that it looks like it's doing some strange frequencies. That always looks really cool. I love the way you do that. Um, and it's going out through the entire school. It's messing with the ghoul. It's messing with the polyp. It's messing with the Chthonian, and of course, it's messing with the shadow. And starts pulling the shadow into the portal, but the shadow isn't going to let go of Jenny and starts pulling her through. And she calls Alex for help. And of course, as we know, Alex can't say no, and so helps Jenny, um, and promises to help Jenny free her from the shadow, which is what they're calling it. Simon, having done his good deed, is now wants Alex to go back to the honor council hearing and help him get off, from the charges. Um, let's talk about this because this is a cool sequence with the shadow, with the music. You know, how do you add energy to sort of convey the consequences of what's going on here?
The energy.
Yeah, so like the energy to like the tension in the panels to sort of, make the audience feel like what's at stake here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have to build it up page by page. Actually, it doesn't
Yeah.
happen like instantly in
Yeah.
one page. I mean, like we discussed before, the script and the art always goes hand in hand.
Hmm.
So if the script is not leading towards that,
Yeah.
the art, however good it is, it's also going to fail to convey that sense of tension.
Yeah, the rising tension.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if if they complement each other,
Hmm.
the art will convey that.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then you will fail to draw the readers in.
Yeah.
They will not feel anything uh, that's going on. The when the readers go through the panel, they have to have this sense of dread that something bad is going to happen to the
Right.
characters, and for some reason they fear for their lives.
Right.
And that's where, like I said before, the mechanization and the facial expressions
Hmm.
help.
Yeah.
The way they're running for their lives has to look authentic to how their characters are.
Right.
Like Simon is always like you could say that in theater he's always overacting
Hmm.
because that's what his character is. He's always wanting to survive,
Right.
while Alex is more calm and collected, and we gotta think of something.
Right.
But yeah, I also have to survive. It's not like I can beat these things on my own.
Right. But okay, so one of the things that I really like is in this on this page where the shadow is pulling Jenny into the thing. You do this great thing where you tilt the angle so it's almost like Jenny is starting to fall back into the portal with the shadow, and Alex's hand is coming out to reach her, but it almost looks like it's coming down. He needs to pull her up. And it's a cool thing that you do with angles there to sort of add to the tension. Does that make any sense?
Since the portals are coming up from all sides, we don't really know if it's coming from the left, the right, the top.
Hmm.
So this panel over here, where it looks like she's coming from the top, it just looks like that, but it's more like side
Oh
top
yeah,
view of their hands.
right.
So, but yeah, but you're right. It's supposed to have that sense of disorientation,
Yeah.
that you don't really know where all of these portals are popping up.
Right. And it creates this sort of this feeling that like she needs rescuing, which is exactly what they're trying to create. They're trying to create this feeling that Alex needs to rescue Jenny because we know that Alex has that mentality where she likes to rescue people, that she gets drawn into to helping people out. And so of course that would be the perfect way to get at her is to put Jenny in jeopardy, and Alex, rescues her and vows to help her out and all of that. because that's sort of playing into what's going on here. Um, so they Simon takes Alex back to the Honor Council. The Honor Council has already made their ruling, and has decided to find him guilty. And as such, Simon is being expelled from Miskatonic High, um, which is something that we had talked about for a little while, wanting to see. You know, Miskatonic High, this really old school, high mentality sort of place, high-minded place is like Simon's perfect place. It's where he's really happy. And so we wanted to kind of take him out of his comfort zone by seeing what happened if he got kicked out of school. And sort of set up, what's going to happen to him this season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Poor Simon.
New
I
adventures for Simon.
Yes, there are. I like that he rips the Miskatonic High seal off of his blazer. When I was a kid, there was oh, man, I think it was the Rifleman. It was this old western, and they drum beat this guy out of the army. And one of the things they did was they ripped the army insignia off his jacket as he was going out into the world. And so this feels very much like that, which I really like.
Yeah, it's kind of emblematic
Hmm.
of what's happening.
Good one. I like that. Um, and then we go back to Jenny, who we find out has been working with the Shadow. The Shadow takes Jenny to a place that we've been to before, which is this portal place that we were in issue 10, I think it was, long time ago.
A
Um,
long time ago.
Yep. And so, talking about one of the it's the outer gods, right? The Azathoth out in this
Mhm.
portal that can finally see him, and get the sense that both Jenny and this shadow creature are serving Azathoth, um, and they have some plan in mind for wanting to get close to Alex. What that plan is, how it's going to work out, we can't tell you yet. But it's kind of a great place to
Yeah,
leave you. Hopefully.
like we mentioned at the start of this commentary that we had bigger plans aside from Jenny,
Right.
and this is just the beginning,
Yeah. I
laying the foundations.
Right. And yep, we got some more coming up next issue, which I think are great. We sort of hinted at a few of them, but we're not going to tell you any more. But yeah, I'm really enjoying seeing the kids back at school, seeing the kids all back together. In the school, sort of they've grown quite a bit since the last time sort of seen them all together. It really feels like, a lot has happened, and it feels like that. So I think it's really cool. I'm really enjoying this season so far.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning, and the next few issues are going to be even wilder than this, if you can believe that.
I've seen them. I can't believe it. Yep,
Uh,
got some
I
great
can't
things.
believe it, and I drew it.
I know, right? Yeah. So all of this is sort of leading up to um, our big issue 25, which we've been hinting at for a little while, and we've seen it. It's done. It's in the can. We can't wait to show it to you. It's going to be a big thing, and I think you're going to love it. Um, so that's it for issue 23. A fun issue, I think. One thing that I want to hit before we end this is to talk about the 3-panel cover image that you made, that we used for our noir and manuscript variant, because it's an image that I really love of them sort of at this assembly, seeing the individual characters sort of spread out, but also the monsters and stuff. And it's a really great image, and we don't talk about it very much, but wanted to see if you had wanted to talk about how you composed that image and put that one together because I think it's a really great one.
Well, just like the cover, the standard cover for this,
Hmm.
I think the splash page was one of the emblematic, again, that image for this issue, and I wanted to recapture that for our gatefold cover.
Hmm.
I think it's a release. The splash page was a striking image, but
Hmm.
I wanted it to convey the characters more
Yep.
and format it into something that we can use as a cover.
Hmm.
At the same time, reintroduce the school with the banner
Yep.
flying overhead. It's like Jurassic Park, like
Yeah, it
welcome to
is.
Jurassic
Hmm.
Park,
Hmm.
welcome to. So it just represents the chaos nature of this issue
Yeah.
with this cover. Like if you see this image, what the heck is going on? All hell has broken loose.
Well, it's one of those
The end
images,
of
like,
Miskatonic High.
right. Well, it's one of those images, like, there are sometimes when I see an image that you draw, and it's like, this perfectly encapsulates, like, what this series is about. It's a bunch of kids at the school as things are just completely going nuts. And that's, to me, like, sometimes when I want to introduce new readers or new people to like what the comic is really quickly, like that's an image that I would use from now on to say this is what Miskatonic High is. It's one that I really like and that I think really works very well to sort of introduce the ideas of the comic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely.
So that's it for issue 23. I want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ryan, for chatting with us. It's
Hey,
always fun.
you want to talk about the next issue?
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and talk about next issue. So issue 24,
He,
the winter carnival comes to the school. Um, Sarah and Anton especially go out and get a chance to hang out at the carnival, and are having fun.
Carnival.
And yeah, until they happen to come across someone a little familiar and set some tension going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Old
think,
friends coming back.
yeah, friends. Yeah, sure. Let's call them friends. Family, eh, relatives. Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's also leading up again to the 25th. So it's something that you're going to want to check out because it'll help lead with those storylines. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. We don't often get to see crazy carnival people in Miskatonic High, so that was a lot of fun. And Freak Show tent has some good things as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think people are going to like
Look
that.
out for it.
Yep. So yeah, that will. I think we're planning to launch that just before Halloween. So yeah, come October, be on the lookout for the next issue of Miskatonic High.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. Yep. It absolutely is. All right. Thank you, Ryan. Hope your day is good.
Thank
My
you.
night, yeah, my night is good. And I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye,
Talk to you
everybody.
soon.